This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar.
Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by our Barth. That's a bit. That's a match. No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
Arnold Palmer is in his final U.S. Open. The beginning.
No one cares about that.
Shut no, you're not. No, you're not going to say that on the first day of the Masters.
No. Oh.
Absolutely not.
I can't wait to go home and watch all 4 rounds of the Masters. I did watch the back 9 of the Masters. You're welcome.
So you waited till the worst part. It was a great weekend up until Sunday.
A great weekend.
It was
Everybody had
great weekend up until Sunday.
Such a fun time watching that. I highly doubt it. I think you all are lying to yourselves about golf. Anyways, Patriots Catch-22 here. Evan Lazar, Alex Barth. Before we get going, and we got plenty to talk about. 8 days. 8 days to the NFL draft here. It's going to go down right here at Gillette Stadium. War room right down the hall. So it's going to be a big day for the organization. But before we get into it, I just want to shout out a few of our sponsors. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. And hey, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots, Toyota. Let's go to the draft. And before we get into the draft stuff, and, this is my least favorite part of the job, and you know that. You know that.
Me too.
This is my least favorite part of the job. And
I would think you like it because you like all those reality shows.
No, because that's stuff that doesn't actually matter to me. Like there's no actual connection.
So
to me
there's a
whatsoever.
level of being removed that you need
exactly.
to enjoy it. Okay.
But before
I'll give you that.
Before I started working here, when we worked together at Clintus and stuff, you know that nothing puts me in a bad mood like a Seth Wickersham article about the Patriots. And it's nothing to do with Seth. Like I'm not trying to take shots at him. I'm being better about that. I'm not taking shots at people on our airwaves. It's nothing to do with him. I don't care. I don't care. And if you care, then that's fine. And for people that don't know what we're talking about, ESPN dropped a story this morning about why Bill Belichick lost out on a coaching job on the coaching carousel back in January. And there was some source reporting there, some anonymous source quotes that basically said that Robert Kraft sabotaged Bill Belichick with the Atlanta Falcons. That's the summation of what was said. And the quote was from a Belichick source. So somebody in Belichick's camp believes that this went down.
You'd imagine to play it out, it would have to be somebody who knows both Belichick and Kraft, right?
Maybe. If you care about this kind of stuff, if this kind of stuff interests you, if this kind of stuff is important to you, or you like the drama, you like you said, the reality TV of it all, right? Then that's totally fine. That's not this show.
No.
That's not this show, and it's not me. Like I don't care. I don't care. And I think the other thing that is important in all of this, to me, is that in the article did touch on this. So I'm not saying that they completely ignored this fact of it, but this people being completely blown away that Bill didn't get a job, I don't think have been paying attention to what's been going on around here for the last 5 years.
Or going on around the league, and the piece kind of touched on that as well.
Yeah, 71-year-old coach who is 10 games below 500 since Tom Brady walked out the door, really botching a quarterback situation in a rebuild, and is just not, in my opinion, an overly attractive candidate.
And the piece gets into that.
As crazy as that sounds.
But the piece does get into that beyond the Kraft comment is only a part of it.
Which is what's going to get the headlines.
Which is
what annoys me, right? Like that's the whole thing.
And they also talk about, teams hesitant to give him the full control and the coaches he would bring and the fact that, he might be, 2 years and done if he gets the coaching record. They don't expect him to coach beyond getting that wins record, which are all kind of things we talked about and some things we heard leading up to him not getting a job. So the Kraft thing's a part of it. It's definitely a part of it. Like you said, it'll get the headline. But I thought the more fascinating thing to me personally was the Falcons. He wasn't even top 3.
Well, I don't think he was top 3 because and there's been other reporting about Rich McKay's role in all of this and some of Terry Footnote's role in this. Those people, I think...
Is that how you pronounce that?
I think so. I don't know.
I've been trying to figure that out.
Those people are looking at it as like a self-preservation thing to me. They don't want to have to cede any of their power to Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick comes in, and let's face it, if you hire Bill Belichick as your head coach, even if he doesn't have the complete personnel football control that he had in New England, you are a head coach, and the article touched on this. You are a head coach is at the top of the masthead, right? Like that's your organization is funneling through the head coach. And then, yes, maybe you have some personnel guys and some CEO types and things like that are also involved. But I think those two guys, whether they want to admit it or not, McKay and Footnote, which is how I'm going to say it, I don't know if that's right. Those two guys, I think we're looking at it and saying, who can I work with the easiest? Like, who's not going to just muscle me out of this whole thing? And Belichick certainly, at least in the beginning of the interview process, had Arthur Blank's ear.
Fontenot.
Had Arthur Blank's ear, and Arthur Blank called him a living legend. I think that's the guy that Arthur Blank's going to turn to and say, what should we do here? It's not going to be Fontenot.
Right.
And so when you pull the class and you say, Terry, who do you want? And Rich, who do you want? They're obviously not going to pick the most powerful guy in the room. They're going to pick who they picked.
The guy who they feel they can work with.
Raheem Morris, right?
Well, so that's the thing. So their list was Raheem Morris, who they had experience with, they knew because he'd been in Atlanta. And then Mike McDonald and Bobby Slowick, who would have been first-time head coaches. Younger
coaches, obviously, but also, like you just said, guys that the GM can have power over.
Well, because their first time, I think that's it's their first go-around.
Yeah. So,
and for Slowick, a guy who really just rose up very quickly.
Yeah.
So even more so.
That's about as much time as I wanted to spend on that.
All right, perfect.
I'm sure we'll talk about it in more in depth and have a longer conversation about it on Patriots Unfiltered tomorrow. That's more that show, right? You come to this show to talk about the draft 8 days before the draft, and that's what irks me so much about these things, is that was the other point I wanted to make. This is the most monumental draft the Patriots have had since Drew Bledsoe in 30 years. And 8 days out, when we're about to do a show, I wake up on a Wednesday morning and this story drops. This, you want to call it a bombshell. This bombshell story from ESPN drops, and now all of a sudden that's the prevailing narrative. I know when I turn on my radio and I go to drive home today, it's on your station, that what they're going to be talking about.
Well, unless they're doing the big board.
No, they won't be. They'll take 5 minutes out of the hour to do the big board so that they can spend the other 55 talking about this, which is fine, but it's just not us. So that's enough of that. But if you want to hear, a bit more takes on that, like we're not dodging it, it just, you can listen to us elsewhere. I'm sure we'll talk about it plenty in other shows and other facets and other spaces. Let's call it that. Yeah. The real news that I wanted to lead with today was just some of the latest about the Patriots and the draft. Obviously, we haven't spoken on air about Michael Penix Jr.'s visit with New England. There's a lot of ways to look at this. Due diligence, I think, is probably the easiest or most likely path. I think that it would have been an oversight to just completely ignore Michael Penix Jr. I think if you're being thorough and you're no stone unturned and you have all the information that you could possibly have going into next Thursday, having information and having an interview and having some face-to-face, having your own doctors check out Michael Penix Jr., all these elements, I think, needed to happen if you're the Patriots. Now, the flip side of it is this a pivot? Like, is this a last-second pivot to trade down, draft Penix at some point later on in the first round, early second round? I don't know where you fall on that. I more fall towards the first one, although that's less interesting. It's just he has a seat at the table of this quarterback conversation, as he should, and it's time to give him that time of day, which they haven't really done up until this point.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Look, also, the deadline for top 30s is today, right? So
yes.
sometimes you don't get every top 30 visit you want. Guys are, booked. They're going all over the country. Can you schedule it? So you sometimes have a couple visits left over later, and maybe this was a case of, hey, we have an extra top 30 visit. We can't take it with us, right? Let's get him in here. Let's talk to him. But he's not, as much as we joked about the whole smokescreen thing with Michael Penix, given his injury history, that's a pretty massive risk to smokescreen with a guy like that. So I think that they see a scenario in which they would take him. Now is that one scenario out of 10, one scenario out of 50, one scenario out of 100, but they see a spot where he's on the board where they need a quarterback and he could be the best quarterback available, so they want to know what they're getting into. And that's what this process is all about. It's, like you said, gathering information. The more information you have, the better. So I'm glad they met with him. I still don't think they're going to draft him because I think they would have been more committed in the process leading up. But more information is good, and they got more information, so I'm not going to complain about it.
Yeah, I think that there's a scenario. The scenario to me on Penix is that they get on the clock next Thursday night. Minnesota calls and says, here's 4 first-round picks for number 3. And you get this Godfather-type offer that you can't turn down. Like, in good conscience, you can't turn down to, let's face it, as much as I like Drake May and as much as I like some of these quarterbacks, at the end of the day, the draft is a lottery. And whether or not those quarterbacks pan out is a 50-50 proposition statistically, literally, about a 50-50 coin flip. So if you get one of those Godfather offers, if the Vikings all of a sudden we'll give you 11, we'll give you 23, we'll give you a first-round pick next year, we'll give you a second-round pick next year, and they just start throwing things at you for the 3rd overall pick when you're on the clock, you have to at least entertain those things, and you have to have a contingency plan of quarterback, because I can tell you right now, they are not leaving this draft without a quarterback. If maybe it's not the 3rd overall pick, I can't guarantee that they're going to take a quarterback at 3 overall, but I feel pretty comfortable guaranteeing that they're going to take a quarterback in the first 2 days of the draft. It just, from all angles, organizationally, that's going to happen. They're not going into next year with Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi as their only 2 starting options at quarterback. I can't imagine that being a world that we're living in. So Michael Penix Jr. seat at the table. Just quickly also on Penix, I've had Penix as QB4 this entire time. I know that that's a little bit of a hot take to have him over J.J. McCarthy.
I mean, I'm with you.
I think that when you actually watch the film of these 2 guys, it's really, really difficult to make a case for McCarthy over Penix. Just in terms of both of them have arm talent. Both of them have the intangible stuff that you look for. All the intangible stuff that people talk about with J.J. McCarthy, the leadership and the quote that Dane Brugler had in The Beast about, don't come here if you want to party and chase girls. We're winning a national championship at Michigan. Those types of things. Penix has all of those types of things and is oozing with that type of stuff, if that's what you're into.
Right.
So checks that box. I think as a thrower, he's more consistent, more accurate, more dynamic down the field than McCarthy is. He's not quite as athletic, I wouldn't say. I don't know. I don't think he moves around quite as well.
He moves pretty well. He just doesn't do it.
I don't think he moves like McCarthy. McCarthy's quick, agile, sudden.
I mean,
those are the one
watch him at Indiana?
That's like the one thing. Yeah, it was 4 years ago. That was the one thing with McCarthy that I'll give him.
I think it's comparable.
Maybe in a straight line. I think McCarthy's more nimble than he is.
All right.
More elusive, gets out of the pocket more. The other thing I think with Penix, just in terms of film, one, there are issues against pressure. Now, every quarterback stinks against pressure.
Right.
But he does have issues against pressure because he does have some accuracy and some decision-making stuff on film that's not great when he's under pressure. I also think that there's an element to middle of the field, short game, get the ball out quickly. I don't necessarily think that that's his game. If you're drafting Michael Penix Jr., you're running a vertical-based passing offense.
Right.
You're pushing the ball down the field consistently, there's nothing wrong with that. But that's what you're doing.
And that's something Van Pelt has experience with.
Definitely. I would say that they're more that. Maybe on 3rd down, they kind of get into the, let's just get 7 yards on 3rd and 6. But in terms of their base offense on 1st and 2nd down, they are a push the ball down the field.
I feel like the offense he ran, of any of the quarterbacks, top quarterbacks, the offense Penix ran at Washington is more similar to that Browns offense than what any of the other guys ran.
Yeah, like he wasn't under center, but they used
That's
a
the
lot
one
of,
major difference.
They used a
but-
lot of the same actions, like in terms of moving the pocket, play action, some pistol, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
You know, and also just having them move the pocket a lot.
Yeah.
They definitely did that, rollouts and things like that. So I've been high on Penix. I know you've been really high on Penix too. I don't see a whole lot of fatal flaws on film with him, besides maybe the under pressure stuff.
Yeah. I'll say this just for the short stuff. I would rather teach a quarterback. I think it would be easier, and correct me if I'm wrong, give me the guy that throws a great deep ball, and I'll teach him how to throw a 5-yard slant, as opposed to the guy that, you know, can hit the 5-yard slant consistently, and I got to teach how to throw a deep ball, right? Because not everybody can throw the deep ball. I feel like at a certain level, any quarterback can improve in the short game.
Yeah, I think that with the short game, the biggest thing is touch. And with Penix, and I would say with McCarthy too, so this isn't saying that he's better or worse than McCarthy, because I think this is a big problem for McCarthy too.
Yeah.
They're one-speed throwers. They got big arms, and the ball, it's a 95-mile-an-hour fastball coming down the pipe every single time. Whereas you would like to see a little bit more of let's focus on touch and ball placement on these types of throws versus just trying to thread the needle.
Right.
If you need somebody to thread the needle, both these guys can do it. If you need somebody to hit a moving target coming across the field and you got to layer it in there between a couple zone defenders and also put it in a spot where the receiver can catch and run with it, that's where I think their game takes a little bit of a hit. But if you just need somebody to just thread a needle, or in Penix's case, if you need somebody to hit a 45-yard deep out or, down the field, yeah, definitely can do that. So I like Penix. I've had him as QB4. I don't know how you watch the tape and see it any differently just based off of film. Now, if you want to say McCarthy's younger, McCarthy's got, a little bit more of things that you like in terms of his mobility, then fine. But actual throwing of the football, I would take Penix all day. Where in the draft, I think, is the other question of how early is too early in our minds to take Michael Penix.
I mean, if the board falls a certain way, I would not be opposed to taking him at 6. Like if, let's say the Vikings go up to 5, right?
You take him at 6?
Let's say the Vikings go up to 5 and get McCarthy.
Oh, geez.
How much further down can you move? Because the Raiders have done a ton of work with him. They need a quarterback. We talked about that group of teams like 10 to 19 that are all going to be ready to jump. So if you don't love somebody at 3, you move back to 6. So you assume Drake May, Jayden Daniels go 2-3, right? Vikings trade up to 4 or 5, get McCarthy. Now there's a massive run going. And now you kind of have to make them. I say that you've heard
rich.
me. I know, but you've heard me say this all. But the alternative is not getting a quarterback.
It's just so rich for the injury history.
So then you're just not going to draft a quarterback?
If you're taking a guy that has had 4 season-ending injuries on his resume at 6 overall in the draft.
I'm saying in a scenario
risk.
where McCarthy goes ahead of him.
I understand what you're saying. That
I say this, there's 2 drafts. There's the quarterback draft and there's the draft where everybody else is. And you have to play the quarterback board independent of how you play the regular board. If you believe Michael Penix is the guy and you've traded out of 3, I don't think he's getting to 11. Because the Raiders or the Saints or the Seahawks or one of these teams is going to move up. Maybe you go back to 11 and then you move up. Maybe you can make it work at like 7 or 8 or whatever, something like that. But once McCarthy's off the board, you've got to go get him because there's going to be a race up the board to get him.
Yeah. Oh, man. 6 is rich for me. I think that with Penix, the ideal situation with Penix is that you take a non-quarterback with your first pick and then you're getting Penix with your second pick. I'm not necessarily saying that second pick is at 34, but whenever the case may be, if you take that Minnesota Vikings deal and it's 11 and 23, then maybe you get one of the receivers, maybe you get one of the top tackles, and then you're taking Penix at 23. I think taking Penix in the top 10 is rich. I just don't see how you can do that with the injuries.
So let me ask you this. But are you okay then? So let's say you move back to 6. J.J. McCarthy goes 4th or 5th.
Yeah.
Right? So you have 4 quarterbacks in the top 5, which could happen. Some people have mocked that as happening. You're sitting there at 6. You take Joe Alt, Rome Odunze, whoever, Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
Now what?
I'm waiting. I'm rolling the dice.
Waiting for what? That he's going to get to 34?
No, well, you would have. I would assume that maybe you're going to trade up from 34. I also am not ruling out that he's there at 34.
I am. You have the Broncos at 12. You have the Raiders at 13.
I think
Saints
at
14. Seahawks at 16.
I think that's rich for
Rams
all those
at 19.
teams to take him there. I think
No, it's not. Those are teams that need quarterbacks.
Okay, you need quarterbacks, but you have to understand that the quarterback is compromised. Like he has it.
None of these teams understand that. None of these teams care.
Oh, they definitely care about injuries.
Do you think
there's nothing more than in the draft that they care about more than injuries?
Do you think any team looked at 2021 as some sort of lesson to be learned?
No.
And that's my point.
But
they are going to say,
but none of those guys were hurt.
But they're going to say we need a quarterback. This is the top quarterback on the board.
But none of those guys were hurt in 21.
Somebody's going to convince themselves and see the drop off and say we need to get a quarterback.
Oh man,
we can't come out of this without.
I think the one thing that NFL teams care about when it comes to the draft is availability, whether that's reliability off the field in terms of your character and injury, because you are paying. This is an investment. It's a business investment, and you're paying these guys millions of dollars to come in and play a position.
So I was on the other side of this argument with Felger yesterday. And I guess I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. I do think teams are devaluing. I think the injury thing is what takes him out of the conversation and going top 5. If it wasn't for the injuries, we would truly be debating him and Drake May.
I don't necessarily disagree because I am high on Penix.
That's the injuries knocking. The injuries are what are knocking him down to the 10 to 15 range.
The injuries,
all of those quarterback teams,
the injuries, and the national championship game.
All of those.
Let's face it.
Okay, but all of those quarterback teams, you're not telling me one of them is going to be sitting there saying we have to. This is our chance to get our guy. The consensus board currently has him going 13th. If you pick at 6, you're not getting back up to 13. You don't have the assets unless you borrow significantly from the future.
You can tell me I'm wrong in 2 weeks when we do the show.
So do you remember like 2 months ago we were doing this about Jayden Daniels and you said Jayden Daniels was going 34th?
I was saying that for a different reason.
I know, but I'm just saying. And
I also did that was like a take that I had that this could happen.
You got to remember, as much as you study the players, I'm studying the mechanics of it, the economics of it.
And I'm telling you that the economics of it are that these are business owners, and you're making a business decision. This is the same reason why this happens all the time, that these guys that
it's good business drafting a quarterback that sells jerseys and tickets. Some GM will talk some owner, he's not getting to 34. It's just not happening. It's just not happening.
How do you know that? How do you know that he's not
because
off
I saw
like 20
because I saw Trey Lance in Mac Jones in Zach Wilson.
None of those guys were hurt.
They had especially Lance, who went 3rd. A team traded up for and significant red flags.
That's not an injury red flag. How do you know?
Kenny Pickett went in the first round.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett was healthy.
Kenny Pickett had very small hands.
How do you? So that was why he shouldn't have gone in the first round. No, he shouldn't have gone in the first round because he stunk. But the point is that you have no idea. We have no idea.
So you think teams would rather draft?
I think there's a chance that there's teams that don't have him on their boards, period.
You think there's teams that would rather draft a bad quarterback in the first round than a good quarterback with the history of injuries? You think the teams that have the bad quarterback
because that's not what's happening here. I'm telling you that I think that there's a chance that all these teams that you mentioned that need quarterbacks in that teens range just take other players.
So Bryce Young, injury history, went 1st overall.
What injury history did Bryce Young have?
He got the crap beat out of him in Alabama. He never finished games.
That's not an injury history. This guy had 4 season-ending injuries.
How about Tua?
Yeah, Tua's the good one.
Tua went 5th overall after a hip injury that could have ended his career.
I think Tua is a better prospect than Penix, but I hear you. That's a good one.
I think Tua went to Alabama. That's the difference.
No, I don't think so. I think Tua if he pre-hip injuries, is the 1st overall pick, I think.
Right, but he had the hip injury and he still went 5th.
Yeah, that was a pretty big drop-off when you really think about the hype for Tua. If he goes healthy that entire year. I know you like Penix. I'm just telling you that I think teams are going to have him off the board.
I'm telling you, if your plan going in is to take Michael Penix 34th overall, if that's what this whole offseason has been leading up to, that's a horrible plan, because if you lose him, and there is a chance you lose him, now what? You've wasted an entire offseason, and we have to do the quarterback carousel thing all over again.
Well, we can argue about this for another hour, but I personally think that you're a little bit underestimating how bad his injury history is. This is not a player that, Amarius Mims, he has tightrope surgery last year, ankle injury, out for, half the season or something like that. Those are the types of injuries that you might be able to overlook for first-round talent. If this guy, we don't know. If there are teams that have ruled Michael Penix out completely because of his knees, the shoulder stuff doesn't worry as much because it's his non-throwing shoulder, but
we know the
ACLs and knees and things like that.
But we know the Broncos haven't.
How do we know that?
Because they've met with him since the combine when he had his physical.
The combine physical is done by the league. These teams bring these players in so that their own doctors can get their hands on.
They went to visit him. You think they brought the doctors to visit him, or you think they want to see him throw?
Absolutely.
The Raiders met with him multiple times.
Yeah, to probably get to know where he's at.
How many times did he meet with him to do a physical?
All right, we'll see. I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I'm just playing devil's advocate because we see this happen all the time with players that fall out of the first round, and you're like, what happened here? And most of the time, we don't know until after.
I'm on the record with this. If there are concerns about his knee, I don't want him. If there are real legitimate concerns about his knee holding up, I don't want him at all.
There are legitimate concerns about his knee.
No, I mean new. You looked at it. It hasn't healed. The report from the combine was he passed the medical testing, right?
Yes.
So if you look at him and you say, yeah, this guy's not going to play more than 5 years, then I don't want him. I don't think that's the case, but that would be something where a team would pull him off their board. If he makes it to 34, I guess my point is I just wouldn't draft him at that point because clearly there's something going on with his knee beyond, the healing hasn't gone properly. The rehab hasn't gone properly.
I hear you. I like Penix. I think he's a first-round talent on film. I don't think there's any question about that. So 6 is way too rich for me. If you're a team in the teens that are going to take him in the Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett range,
but again, to go back to the point of taking him at 6, if it's Michael Penix at 6, if your two options at quarter, or I'll give you 3 options. You can have Michael Penix at 6. You can have Bo Nix at 34. You can have Spencer Rattler at 68.
Yeah.
Which one?
I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Assuming his knee clears the testing.
I don't know. I have to think about that.
Because you don't. That's my point. You don't just get to say I wouldn't take Michael Penix at 6.
I wouldn't.
When you sit there and say they have to come out of this draft with a quarterback, because
a quarterback does not mean this quarterback.
But Penix I assume you mean a guy with actual franchise quarterback upside. What if Penix at 6 is your last chance to get that guy?
See you next year.
All right, and that you know what? That's fine. That's a legitimate take. You don't trust it.
I don't trust
it.
And
I've said that. If they don't believe in the quarterbacks, don't take one. Don't take a quarterback. Just take a quarterback. I believe in Penix enough that if J.J. McCarthy, you trade back, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy go. It's Penix and then Nix. I've said this. I want nothing to do with Bo Nix. I think Spencer Rattler's an interesting prospect, but his floor is way too low in this scenario. I'm taking Michael Penix because I believe he can be a franchise quarterback. If you don't believe he is one, go to next year. That's a fine argument too, but you can't say.
I think he is a potential franchise quarterback on talent, but unfortunately,
well, no, you got to consider the whole makeup. And look, I haven't seen his knee. I wouldn't even know what to make of it if I did. I'm not a doctor, but I'm going off the reports, which are he cleared testing at the combine.
Yeah.
I'm working under that assumption. I would take him at 6 if he's last chance. Now, if I'm at 6 and J.J. McCarthy's still there, I maybe find a team that wants to trade up and take McCarthy. I move back and I take Penix a little later. Maybe a double trade back. But if Penix is, you don't get to say Penix is too rich at 6, but yes. I need them to walk out of this draft with the starting quarterback.
Why not?
Because what if that's the only option? What if it's
Why
A
is that
or
the
B?
only option? You just named 2 other guys. I mean, I'm not a Spencer Rattler guy, but I like Bo Nix a little bit more than you do.
Do you think Bo Nix can be a franchise quarterback?
No, but I think Bo Nix can be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
If you're saying they need to come out of this,
Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr.
If you're saying they need to come out of this I think that's very generous. If you're saying they need to come out of this,
why do you hate Bo Nix so much?
He's so boring.
So that doesn't mean
he doesn't do
bad.
anything. What did he do?
Well, that's also their offense.
Right, we've been down that road
with Justin Herbert,
and
look what happened.
Mac Jones.
No,
I'm saying they're off.
Mac Jones' offense is way different.
6.0 ADOT. Come on, what did he do?
Yeah, go look at Justin Herbert's ADOT at Oregon.
All right, Bo Nix is not.
I'm not saying that, but that's
Justin Herbert.
They're a quick game offense. Like that's what they do.
I saw enough of Bo Nix at Auburn to know who Bo Nix is.
Okay, I don't know. I mean, like if then you're out on Jayden Daniels because him at Arizona State was not good either.
I don't think Arizona State was so. Okay, couple things.
Yeah,
I don't think Arizona State was the program Auburn was at the time.
Yeah, but Auburn hasn't been Auburn
flaws.
since Cam Newton.
I also think Bo Nix didn't show growth. He just did different things. Jayden Daniels showed legitimate growth.
That's fair. I think Bo Nix is Bo Nix. He is what he is. And there, as a day 2 pick, that's where you should be taking those guys. Like that's the Mac Jones.
Bo Nix is a day 2. Yeah, Bo Nix is a day 2 pick, but a day 2 pick is not a franchise quarterback. So to the people saying
he's a starting quarterback.
So and again, so this is my I have fringe starter.
Oh, I think he has starter potential. Like
he has starter potential.
Okay, but you don't know anybody's has any of these guys could just bust out and not be anything.
Okay,
so
but to get back to the point, if you're somebody saying the Patriots need to come out of this draft with a franchise quarterback,
yes, there
is a scenario, and we'll go through our mock drafts here in a minute.
Yeah,
there is a scenario if the Patriots trade back. If you take Drake May, you got your potential franchise quarterback. Great. This is more talking about the trade, which I don't think will happen. We're spending all this time on something that's not going to happen.
This is what we do.
That's what we do, right? We're in our bag right now. If there is a real scenario,
yes,
where it's Michael Penix at 6 or no franchise quarterback,
and
the noises you're making are why you don't trade down at all, and just you can't. The bag isn't a guarantee either. 3 first-round picks, great. You still got to hit on those picks and. Those picks are going to be just as scary as this one.
Here's my final take on Penix, and then we're going to argue, and we're not budging. Neither one of us here.
I want to ask you one more thing after this, but okay.
Here's my take on Penix. If he's the second player that they draft in the draft, I'm all in.
I don't think there's a way they can do that.
If it's Rome Odunze with Penix, I know that's Felger's take.
That's Felger. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yesterday, I actually love that.
I love that too. I just don't think it can happen unless you're willing to borrow from the future. And are you willing to borrow from the future for that?
Well, I think what's tougher about it is getting a Odunze, because I think you could trade from 11 and 23 with Minnesota.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit more wary of Penix than you, so I think there's a chance that Penix will be there at 23. But
maybe. But what if here's the thing? Maybe. Are you willing to bet your job that he'll be there at 23?
No.
And you still have to get from 11 to 6. All right,
but that's the bigger to me. The problem is more that Odunze is not making it to 11.
You'd have to get from 23 up to like 6, 7, 8 somehow in order to do that.
Why?
To get Odunze.
No, I think well, you'd have to get from 11. You mean?
But you just said you're not willing to bet your job on Penix being there at 23.
I'm not willing to bet my job on anything because I don't know enough. I don't know. We don't know how
that
the
goes
board's
back to my
going to
point.
break. But I think the biggest thing is that duo is really tough to do. It just now, could I be talked into Penix at 11? I feel a little bit better about it because you still got.
That's more realistic.
You at least you still got the bag in the trade.
Right.
I think the biggest thing for me is I see, and I think this is we kind of finally got it out of us, right? I think the biggest thing to me is that going from 3 to 6, I think, is absolutely useless trade for the Patriots. Because you're just not going to – you're simply not getting enough.
Oh, see, I think 11 – going back to 11 and 23 is useless.
Why?
Because –
now you're getting 2 really good players.
But you're out of – they need a blue-chip guy. You're out of the – unless maybe Olu Fashanu falls, you're out of the range.
I think Olu Fashanu could be there. I mean, I'm not like big on them taking Brock Bowers just because I don't think it makes a ton of sense. But I think Olu Fashanu could definitely be there. I think Brock Bowers will be there if you like that sort of thing.
It's got to be Fashanu, Alt, Harrison – Neighbors, Odunze if you don't go quarterback.
I just feel like going from 3 to 6. So who you're taking at 6?
Probably Neighbor. I would take Alt. I think they would take Neighbors.
I don't think Alt will be there. I think Alt will go to the Chargers. But that's
so. I also think I don't think the Chargers are picking 5. I don't think that's happening.
Okay, but the main point is that 3 to 6. You're going to get a little bit of something. Maybe you get a future first
also,
out of it or something
that Giants
like that.
first-round pick next year could be
But the Giants
legit.
The Giants are coming up to take your quarterback.
Yeah, but have you seen what they have? Nothing else. Their roster's worse than the Patriots. Their offense is worse than the Patriots.
I don't.
Their best offensive player might retire before camp.
You're not going to get anything. Is my point. Like going from 3 to 6 does you nothing.
You don't undersell that first round pick from the Giants next year. Don't undersell that. And I'd assume you'd get their second this year too. So you get whatever that is.
I hate
30
that trade.
You'd get 30 something. You'd get 30 something.
You're trading out of a
future
quarterback
first, future
pick
third.
to probably take one of these receivers who, granted, is going to be a good player, and then you're not picking again till 34, which I definitely agree with you at this point that Penix is probably out of the conversation.
Ideally,
it's just like, where do you go
So
from
you're
there?
also going to get the Giants second in that trade. You're probably going to get their first and second this year, their first next year, and maybe their third next year, right? So
You think?
Yes.
To go up 3 spots?
Based on the historical context of that move, like past trades. That's more. So
I hate that trade.
Here, ideally, if you made that trade, I think the Giants have 39, whatever their second round pick is. You would package 34 or 39, whatever it is, in something else and move back up into the late first. You wouldn't pick at 34 and 39.
I hate that. I hate that trade.
I don't like it either. One more thing I want to ask before we move on from this, because Felger asked me.
Yeah.
What is a bigger reach?
Yeah.
All right, 2-part. What is a bigger reach? Michael Penix at 13 or J.J. McCarthy at 3?
Good question. It's pretty comparable, honestly.
Oh, come on. Consider who you're passing on in each scenario.
If
you're taking JJ,
I'm going to say whichever side is negative towards McCarthy. So I guess the bigger reach is McCarthy at 3.
Here's what.
But if you really look at, like, if you stack together a big board of the prospects, McCarthy is probably the 25th best prospect in this draft, I would say, and Penix is probably in the 30s.
You just said you have Penix ahead of McCarthy.
Yeah, I do,
Oh,
but
okay,
I'm just talking about the way the board is going to fall.
In that situation,
yeah,
you're taking McCarthy over Daniels or May.
Yeah, which isn't, to me, and we have questions already.
Because you have to consider who you're. Part of it being a reach is who are you taking
the Patriots,
guy instead of.
I'm comfortable with saying this. The Patriots taking McCarthy over Daniels or May is borderline fireable.
Yeah. All right, second part.
It's unacceptable. Now, in 3 years, if I'm totally wrong and they're right, then good for them. Like, they did a better job at this than I did. You know, I'll tip the cap and I'll admit that I was wrong and I'll fall on the sword. But the information that we know going into the draft about these guys, putting McCarthy ahead of either one of those guys on your board is malpractice to me. That's to me. And so any scenario where you're taking McCarthy over Daniels or May, I'm out.
All right, so McCarthy at 3 is a bigger reach than Penix at 13.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. McCarthy at 3 or Penix at 6?
Why do I have to pick those two?
What's a bigger reach?
Penix at 6.
So you would rather take McCarthy over Drake May than take Penix at 6?
I don't know why those are my only 2 options.
Because Felger asked this to me, and I thought it was a great question.
But I have other options.
I
could take Marvin Harrison Jr. if I didn't like the quarterbacks. Like, why do I have to take
What is
the
a bigger reach? No, but you're dodging the question. What is a bigger reach?
I am, because there's other options. No one's saying that you have to
It doesn't have to be the Patriots. In a bubble, any team, what would you consider to be a worse decision? McCarthy at 3 with May or Daniels on the board, or Penix at 6?
McCarthy at 3.
Assuming Penix is...
McCarthy at 3, but Penix at 6 is also not a good decision.
Okay.
But McCarthy at 3.
Penix at 6, assuming McCarthy's off the board, so he's now the next quarterback up, obviously.
The main thing is I just can't live in a world where they're passing on Daniels or May for McCarthy.
And that was what I said to Felger yesterday. That's ultimately... That's makes that too significant of a reach. Yeah.
All right, so the other thing that we wanted to do today... Well, one more thing of news, because we just got bogged down by that per usual.
Is this breaking news?
No.
Oh.
So I was telling you about this before. So Bob McKinn, longtime reporter, NFL reporter, every year he writes a great article about some of the draft prospects where he interviews scouts, people around the league anonymously, and this is not the what's the word for it? This is not the PG version of the draft. This is what we really...
This is the real draft.
What we really think of this kid version of the draft. So some of the biggest one is about A.D. Mitchell, which I'll get to in a second. A couple of them, though, Troy Franklin does not have a lot of support right now amongst scouts, according to McGinn.
Who was early on that one?
Has a lot of criticism, play strength, ball tracking, catching the football in traffic, finishing through contact. He said, that these scouts that he pulled basically made Troy Franklin sound like Tyquan Thornton, right? Like that he's going to
I wonder who was early on that one.
run straight in a fast line, and that's about it. Run fast in a straight line. There we go. And that's about it. The other big one, though, the biggest one, and I think that this pertains a lot to the Patriots just because we've talked about this player a ton, is A.D. Mitchell, who, according to these scouts, is a diabetic. And other guys in the league have been diabetics before. It's not
Mark Andrews.
Yeah, it's not the first time. But I guess with Mitchell, you have to really, these scouts are saying that you have to really stay on top of it because his mood swings depending on how he is in terms of his health. And I think the biggest thing, again, I always am wary of these reports because I'm not a doctor. I don't know A.D. Mitchell personally. I'm not trying to slander the kid, right?
Right.
But the biggest thing I think is with him, there were questions from people on the outside like us that are just watching the film and studying these guys and getting to know these guys about why this 6'2", 205-pound receiver with a 4.3 wasn't more productive in his college career. And I think that some of the things that they painted of him were that his effort level and his focus and his drive and all those things can come and go. And I think that that's what we saw in film at times, honestly. Like, there are times where he takes routes off. So I think the biggest thing with A.D. Mitchell is, and this is also, as you would expect, Jermaine Burton was also in this and not a very positive light.
Yeah.
And with A.D. Mitchell, I think the biggest thing is that the right culture fit for this Patriots team where Gerard Mayo in particular has emphasized culture so much? Like, that's going to be really important to them, is having the right attitude and having the right guys and leadership in the locker room. If you're going to use a high pick on A.D. Mitchell and he's going to have to be babysat throughout his NFL career, as talented as he is this something that could potentially take him off the Patriots' radar?
I mean, maybe. Mitchell, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe. How well do they feel they can manage it? I think that is something you discuss with your, strength and conditioning staff, your nutritional staff, and it's like, do we think we can have a plan for him? And if they do, and they just kind of overhauled the strength and conditioning staff, right? Moses Cabrera out. Yeah. Gerard Mayo promoted. If they think they can have a plan, they may see it as a value thing. If they don't think they can have a plan, then yeah, he might be off their board.
It's tough because these questions went around. You look at the analytics in terms of production, you look at the box score, there's something missing from that profile. Like, this guy that's under 2 yards per route run, one of the worst in this class amongst like these top guys, is a freak when you watch him on film. Just explosive, awesome route running ability, change of direction ability for his size, catch point stuff. Like, he could do it all. And he just wasn't overly productive with it. Well, I think for whatever reason.
Some of that, he was buried at Georgia, and then it's not like he was a number one at Texas. They had Worthy and Sanders. Like, that ball was spread out quite a bit, and they had a backup quarterback for part of the year, but that could be part of it as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. It said, here's the exact quote. He's kind of going to do it his own way. He's a little bit of a wild horse. You've got to see if you can harness him in.
So they haven't met with him, right?
No.
All right. So
maybe at the combine, but not formally.
That's where I wonder maybe how interested they are with that, because that's the kind of guy you want to meet with and talk to him about how you managing this. What do you do? What don't you do? How open would you be to trying some new ways to manage it? Things like that.
So the other thing, I didn't have Troy Franklin. I published my big board earlier this week. I took Troy Franklin off because if you want to make the Tyquan Thornton mistake twice in a 3-year span, that's on you. I'm not doing it.
Exactly.
If you want to draft that same exact body type, and yes, Troy Franklin is a better route runner than Tyquan Thornton is coming into the league, but if you want to take that same exact body type and expect different results, that's on you. That's how I look at that. The other guy that I didn't have on my board that might have been a little bit of surprise was Jermaine Burton, who I took off for these exact reasons. According to McGinn, he polled in at least 2 teams have Jermaine Burton completely off their board for character concerns. There was that incident after a game, right, at Alabama, where he got into
Tennessee,
where he got into with some fans coming off the field. So there's some real talent there. Probably a top 50 pick in terms of pure talent on film with Jermaine Burton, but another one of those guys that I can't really envision them picking. So A.D. Mitchell, I still think the talent is so good that maybe they overlook it and think they can manage it, like you said. But I would say that those three guys, Mitchell, Franklin, Burton, are three guys that I'm sure a lot of people that listen to our show have mocked to the Patriots, have put on the Patriots radar. And I don't know if those last two, specifically Franklin and Burton, are going to be on there.
Yeah, those are tough sells.
Yeah. All right. So the other thing we wanted to do today was a top 10 mock draft. And I have a feeling that my top 10 mock draft is very different from Alex's because I don't have nearly as many trades as I'm sure you do.
I have one trade.
Oh, okay, me too. So I was totally wrong. But I think we have a different trade. So this is probably the only time I'm going to do this. But it's top 10. And, just we'll go pick by pick. Obviously, I think 1 is we probably have
Caleb
the same
Williams,
name.
yeah.
Caleb Williams. I don't think we have to really discuss that all too much. Is there anything that worries you about Caleb beyond take the nail polish and the pink phone case out of it, but in terms of his film, is there any reason to think that this is a bad decision by the Bears?
No, I mean, it's not to say he's perfect. Like, he's got to get more used to playing in structure. Like, just the wild stuff isn't going to work. It'll work in the NFL, but not with the regularity it did at USC. But there's a lot of guys that come into the NFL and make that adjustment. I know everybody always next Mahomes and that, blah, blah, blah. My comp for him, and I'm sticking with this, is like prime Russell Wilson. Not current Russell Wilson, but like Seahawks leading them to Super Bowls, Russell Wilson. I think that's the kind of player the Bears should plan on getting and build around.
Yeah, that's a good comp because I think you hear a lot of Patrick Mahomes, and I know that that's lofty.
It's unrealistic.
I think you hear a lot of Aaron Rodgers, which I also think is kind of lofty.
That's probably a ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's still multi-MVP award winner.
Rodgers is also a bigger guy.
He is.
Like, Caleb Williams is kind of small.
He is. I think that's the one reason why the Russell Wilson comp probably works the best out of all of them is because they're both relatively the same size. Caleb's short. I mean, he's measured in at...
He's 6'1", right?
He's a little over 6 feet, I think. I want to say like 6 feet and 5/8.
Okay.
I don't know how right I am about that.
I'm looking. But yeah, I think Russell Wilson is what you should be aiming for the Bears. Like, build that kind of offense.
Yeah, and I think that he has the ability to be Russell Wilson for longer than Russell Wilson was Russell Wilson, if that makes sense. Like, I think his window in the league will be a little bit longer than Russ's. Russ dropped off real quick.
Right. Well, the Bears hired as their offensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah. What's his name?
Shane Waldron.
Yeah. Russell Wilson all of a sudden just went like this.
Well... The Seahawks. Oh, no, I was going to say the Seahawks stopped having talent, but they didn't. You're right.
Yeah. They have weapons on offense. All right. That brings us to the Commanders.
NFL.com is Caleb at 6'1".
All right. I thought he was like barely under 6'1".
Zerline has his comp as Kyler Murray. I don't know about that.
I don't think he runs quite as well.
I don't think he runs quite as well, and I think he's tougher.
Yeah. Well, he's bigger.
Yeah, like he'll absorb the hits more.
I can see where some of the tools line up.
A little bit.
Mobility, play extension,
and it's
arm
easy because he's coming from that Cliff Kingsbury offense.
Yeah,
but,
there's a little elements there.
I still like Russell Wilson as the comp.
So that brings us to the Commanders at 2,
yep.
Who basically control the Patriots' fate in this draft. I think what the Commanders do, I know there's been reporting, I think Schrager said it, who's usually pretty plugged in with the landscape, that the Patriots would probably be happy with either Daniels or May. I have a hard time believing that, not because I have any inside information. I just feel like you have to have a preference. There has to be a guy that you really like more.
You can have a preference and still think the other guy's good.
Yeah, but I just feel like I think there's a chance that if Washington takes their guy, they're trading out of that pick, and if they don't, then they take the quarterback.
They could think both. No, they can absolutely think both are worthy of the 3rd overall pick. They can like one guy more. So let's say they really like Drake May, right? Really like Drake May. That's the guy. And somehow Caleb Williams goes 3rd. You're telling me they'd trade out of the pick because he's not Drake May?
No. But I'm talking about these two guys. And
okay, so you don't think there's a chance that they believe Daniels is worth a 3rd overall pick?
I think there's a chance that they think Daniels is worth the 3rd overall pick on talent. I have real concerns about him and Alex Van Pelt. I just have concerns about, and I understand that some people are going to hear that and say, come on, like, you just take the best player available and you figure it out.
That's what I'd say.
I think that's easier said than done. Just as somebody that, I'm not a coach, but as somebody that talks to these guys and understands how it works, building a system for a quarterback that doesn't fit your system that you've been running for the past 20 years and is your bones of your foundation in the NFL, that's really difficult to do. And I look at the Bears before this with Justin Fields. They messed this up with Justin Fields. And they essentially tried to put Justin Fields in that Luke Getsy offense that was what the Green Bay Packers are running with Jordan Love right now and ran with Aaron Rodgers before that, which is what Alex Van Pelt wants to run. And they tried to make Justin Fields into that thing. Right. And what happened? I look at Jayden Daniels. Is Alex Van Pelt going to all of a sudden become a spread savant? Like, is he going to all of a sudden become a more of like a college style offense that he's going to be running, what LSU was running and, what the Eagles kind of run or one of those types of teams? I just have a tough time with that pairing of Daniels and Van Pelt. I've had that concern the entire time, which is why I've always leaned towards May.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think one of the interesting things about the Commanders, Breer, I think, was first on this. They had like an outing, like a top 30 visit outing, where at Topgolf, your place, they had everybody at once. All the prospects came at one time, not separate individual visits like everybody else does. They had.
They basically had The Bachelor.
They had The Bachelor for quarterbacks.
I don't think it was just quarterbacks. I think it was like 20 prospects.
Who gets the rose?
Jayden Daniels.
Who gets the rose? So it's Jayden Daniels, Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, and I think Penix is there too.
Drake May there?
Oh, yeah. Drake May.
They were all there. Except Bo Nix.
All four of those guys are there except Bo Nix.
He's boring.
And it's literally Survivor. It's The Bachelor. It's who gets the rose, which to me, we talked about this a little bit off the air, like, why do this? The only reason that I can come up with is that Mr. Backwards Hat, Dan Quinn, who I know is like a football hardo. Like, he's not a bad coach, but that's just his thing. He's a hardo. Let's face it. And I think he wants to see who the alpha is.
Can I give you one other reason I thought of?
Yeah.
Because they already know who they're taking, and this is just a smokescreen. They already know who they want. They don't need the meeting.
Who are they smoke screening? They have the second overall pick, and the first overall pick is a lock.
They don't want it out there.
I think that Dan Quinn.
You know how weird these teams get around the draft.
Who's the alpha in the room? Who's the guy that everybody looks at, and leads the charge?
All right. Well, then J.J. McCarthy, you're a Washington Commander.
It's possible.
That's how everybody sees this kid, apparently.
I think in some ways, but if I had to guess out of that group, just because I did have some interaction with Drake May and Jayden Daniels at their pro days, so I'm not saying I know them like as friends, but I do see how they move. If I had to guess who's the guy that walks into the room and everybody is the showstopper, I would say it's probably Jayden.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of the way they talked about him.
Because
LSU.
He's the Heisman Trophy winner. He's, has that superstar swag to him already. I think Drake May's got a great attitude too, but Drake May's kind of still a kid. He's kind of still that happy-go-lucky Southern kid, right? Big smile on his face all the time, a lot of energy. Whereas with Jayden walks into the room and has this kind of swagger to him, where he's calm, cool. Reminds me so much of like Jason Tatum, like a star NBA player, where it's not necessary. He's not gonna get up in front of the team and give a speech. He's not gonna be Tom Brady going up and down the sideline saying we got to play harder and tougher and whatever. He's gonna be the I got this guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you get into those types of groups. I have the Commanders taking Jayden Daniels 2 overall. I'm assuming you have the same thing.
And also, like, all the smoke from Schefter.
A lot of smoke. Go buy the jersey.
All that. You can pencil him in. Schefter knows something.
He's not always right on the draft, though.
He knows something. He's been pretty out there about this.
Yeah. I think going back to the whole thing about scheme fit and things like that, and then we'll move on to the Patriots.
Yeah, that's the other thing. He's a better fit for Kingsbury.
I don't think you hire Kingsbury unless that's the way you think you're going.
Right.
You're going to implement a spread. You're going to implement a college offense. What they ran at Arizona, what they ran at USC, Arizona, like with the Cardinals. I just don't think you do that and then draft like a prototypical,
right,
NFL quarterback like Drake May. So that brings us to 3. And shocker, I have the Patriots taking Drake May. I'll just come out and say it. I have the Patriots taking Drake May.
I do too.
Every single time I try to think of trade down scenarios and packages and how they could pivot off this pick and then still get what they need as a team, I still feel as though you're shopping at the dollar store for what you ultimately need, which is a franchise quarterback. And I can't get to moving off the pick. Now, like I said earlier in the show, if somebody calls, Minnesota calls, they offer 4 first-round picks in Justin Jefferson, like obviously they probably would take the deal. But it's going to have to be a true RG3 Godfather type offer from not what the Bears got last year for Bryce Young. It's going to have to be more. And I just ultimately think that from all angles, just sticking and picking the quarterback that happens to just be the best fit probably that the pick could produce in Drake May, I think makes the most sense.
And I also think that J.J. McCarthy hype hurts the Patriots here, because it would be one thing if the drop-off was after May, and this is your last chance to get the guy. There's going to be some teams, and it sounds like Minnesota might be one of them, that say, all right, J.J. McCarthy, same tier.
Yeah.
Same tier quarterback. We'll figure out a way to get him. We're not going to pay this price.
Yeah. Minnesota, there was I think it was Jeremy Fowler threw out there that they're trying to make this trade without 23 in the deal.
Yeah, get out of here.
And obviously it's totally within their right to offer less, right? And that's what you do. You don't just come out with your best offer right away. We all know that in any walk of life. But I think that they are more inclined to making a smallish leap instead of a jump. Like going from 11 to 7, 8, 9.
All right,
instead of a monster jump.
We'll see there.
So 4, Arizona Cardinals.
I still think it's Marvin Harrison.
I have Marvin Harrison too.
Can I tell you what? So this is where I'm like, all right, because the league, and I don't see it this way, but the league sees it as the second tier, assuming Caleb Williams is his own thing, is Jayden Daniels, Drake May, and J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
So now you're in the range where do teams panic and they want the quarterback? I would argue Penix is in that tier, and you shouldn't panic, but wouldn't be the first time teams just blown it on a quarterback and screwed up when it comes to quarterback. That being said, the Cardinals already have 2 first-round picks in this draft. They got a haul last year when they moved back. At a certain point, you got to start drafting players. You have a very special talent on the board. You're trying to maximize what you can get out of Kyler Murray. They have no wide receivers. Maybe they get the Godfather offer, that massive haul, but I think they're going to be as tough to sway as anybody, and I think they take Harrison at 4.
So I have Harrison at 4 too. I have him sticking and picking Harrison. I agree with everything you said. I would just add on top of that, I don't believe it with McCarthy. I've never have. I never will.
Oh, I believe. Well, so here's the difference.
It. So
do you believe the league believes it?
No.
Oh, I think there are teams that believe it.
I think that McCarthy is Mac Jones. I don't think he's Will Levis. I don't think he's fallen that far.
I think he's Zach Wilson.
It's possible. But I think the difference, I see a lot of similarities with McCarthy and Zach Wilson as players.
Yeah.
And I know people say that and they're like, that's really mean. Like, that's even meaner than me saying Brock Purdy, right? But
well, that's the ceiling.
The difference was Zach Wilson is an immature kid. Like, Zach Wilson is between the ears. I really believe that. I think Zach Wilson had all the physical talent in the world to make it in the league. He was immature and didn't approach it the right way and doesn't have it between the ears. So I think teams might look at McCarthy and say Zach Wilson's skill set with intangibles.
So, but that's why I'm saying I think teams will buy the hype.
I think teams are buying the hype in terms of, me personally, I have a 2nd-round grade on J.J. McCarthy.
Same.
The league, quarterback tax, everything, all things considered, I think that ends up making him a top 15 pick. I'm just not ready to say that he's going to be the 3rd or 4th overall pick in the draft.
3rd or 4th, no. I think some teams might get carried away. We'll get to that in a second.
So the Arizona Cardinals.
But the Cardinals are not one of them,
Long way to grandma's house. The Arizona Cardinals, I don't think are going to get the haul that they would need to move off the pick.
The Cardinals have probably the easiest job of anybody in this draft. Like they have... They can roll out chalk 423 or whatever it is, 27, 427.
Yeah.
You had a great day. Like, it's so simple, paint by number for them to have a great draft.
So Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals, which I think, like you had said, they're still trying Kyler Murray right now.
Right.
So if they can give him a generational receiver like Harrison, maybe that is the difference. And he was great with Hopkins.
Right.
So I think that there's a real chance that gets Kyler back to Kyler.
And the other thing is, if you're worried about next year and maybe you want a quarterback in the future, you trade 27 and you pick up future assets.
Yeah.
Like
I still think they could add to their quarterback room later in the draft. Like, they're a team that, like, a Spencer Rattler makes a ton of sense.
Spencer Rattler makes a ton of sense there.
Because you might as well just throw the dart. Right?
And he's similar where, like, you're not going to have to change a bunch with him. Similar
Yeah.
skill set.
Yeah. Okay. So we both have – so far we really have chalk.
We have chalk.
Caleb.
This is where it's going to change.
Jayden. Drake May at 3.
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. Jim Harbaugh's now on the line.
Yeah.
5th overall to the Chargers.
Trading out.
Chargers
are not making this pick. They have too many needs and not enough money.
Make the case.
They need multiple picks.
Okay.
Who has multiple picks to offer?
Minnesota.
Who desperately needs a quarterback and who actually has a contending window right now and can afford to get over aggressive?
Yeah.
Minnesota, who supposedly really likes J.J. McCarthy. Minnesota, who would love to see J.J. McCarthy be a top 5 pick to legitimify whatever the word is, legitimize all his delusions.
This is all him. It's all him.
Works
man.
too
good for him.
Perfectly.
If
it's
he gets
11.
J.J. McCarthy to be the 5th overall pick and he gets a haul for J.J. McCarthy, then good for Jim Harbaugh. He played the game better than anybody.
What's the Kardashian mom?
Kris Jenner.
Yeah, it's some Kris Jenner type stuff. Pulling the strings behind the curtains.
Mom.
Isn't that the thing? Everybody's like, "Oh, Kris Jenner, like
yes.
she's
the mastermind behind the whole thing."
That's what Jim Harbaugh did.
Absolutely.
So it would be in this case because it is a few picks later, and he is the last quarterback on the board. There's no choice. Assuming they as the league sees it, I would still go Penix.
Yeah,
it would be 11, 23 next year's first. That's it for 5.
Makes a lot of sense. I thought about it. It makes a lot of sense. I think the one thing for Jim Harbaugh, though, that I keep going back to is those comments at the owners' meetings about offensive line.
But here's the thing. There's so many tackles, and you're not moving back that far. And they could move back up.
It's a good tackle draft. If you ask me, there's only one Joe Alt.
But here's the thing. They have a really good left tackle. That's the only thing they have.
That's true.
So
maybe
they may be more inclined to
like
target a guy like Fuanga, who I think is a very realistic pick at 11, especially now that the Jets have added some offensive linemen in free agency. And then they also get to go 23, A.D. Mitchell, maybe Brian Thomas falls. You restock that wide receiver room, and now you're rolling.
So
makes all the sense in the world for the Chargers.
I have the Chargers taking Joe Alt here.
Okay.
I just think that Jim Harbaugh is an offensive line guy.
Who's moving to right tackle?
I would say probably Alt. Which
that bums me out.
I think in today's NFL, though, at the end of the day, you got to be able to block both sides.
But you can get a real right tackle plus.
It's a really good combo. Him and Slater. That's a good combo.
Fuanga and Slater isn't.
It's not as good as Alt and Slater.
I think you don't have a guy changing positions. We know how tough that is for linemen.
Yeah, but Alt is so perfect as a tackle that I don't think changing positions is like equal for him. Like, I think that he'll do that easily.
So you'd rather have Joe Alt than Fuanga and Brian Thomas.
Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
I think Joe Alt here, just because of I can hear your trade package and I almost did it myself, but I just look at Joe Alt as such a Harbaugh pick. Like, Harbaugh wants to build the trenches. He wants to run the football. He wants to be that type of tone-setting team, just like they were in Michigan. And it's either gonna make Justin Herbert uber efficient with the dropbacks that he gets, or he's gonna basically put a muzzle on Justin Herbert. I don't know which way it's gonna go.
It's gonna be the second one.
That's what he did with J.J. McCarthy, according to all the scouts that say that J.J. McCarthy's got all this untapped potential. Right? This is the whole argument. I just think that when you talk about Joe Alt, I put Joe Alt in a similar tier as Marvin Harrison in terms of his position. Like, this is a 3D printer version of a left tackle, or a right tackle, I guess, in this case. You just literally asked a scientist, hey, make me a franchise left tackle for the next 10 years, and he would print out Joe Alt.
I think they have a good left tackle. They can get a right tackle plus. I think there's plenty of incentive to move out of that pick.
Okay.
All right.
6, the New York Giants.
So they've missed out on the quarterback run.
Yes.
I considered Penix here, but given they have Daniel Jones, they're not like that immediate of a need. I'd put them on Bo Nix watch early in the second round, or they'd probably do something stupid like draft Joe Milton. I could see it.
I could see them liking Bo Nix because he's very Daniel Jonesy.
Well, I also think they're on, as long as Dayball's there, I think they're on the Joe Milton short list because he's going to say,
fix the tool,
how much of what I did with Josh Allen can I
could
replicate
see that with
Joe
Rattler, too.
Not at 6. I mean, I'm talking later, but
yep.
If you look at their offense,
it stinks.
It's worse than the Patriots, and I don't think it's close.
They have Slayton, right, at receiver.
Darius Slayton, yeah, here, I'll pull it up.
It's terrible.
Their receivers are Miles Boykin. I'm just going to give you the guys. They do have Bryce Ford Wheaton, so break out, you're coming. Jalen Hyatt.
Yeah.
Isaiah McKenzie, Gunnar Olszewski, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton. Their best pass catcher is Darren Waller, who said he might retire before the season starts. He hasn't made up his mind yet.
It's not a good offense.
No. The line's not much better either, so I definitely consider – they have Yadni Kajust.
It's Andrew Thomas, right? They
have Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal, who they took high a couple years ago.
I think both those guys are very serviceable tackles.
So, I mean, Malik Neighbors, next best skill position player on the board, right? After
Makes
Harrison.
A lot of sense.
That's an easy one.
Malik Neighbors in the Stephon Diggs role in this offense is going to just destroy. I really feel that way. Whether it makes Daniel Jones viable or not, I guess is we'll find out in 2024.
Well, worst case scenario, you have him for the next guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just think it makes all the sense in the world. I don't think the Giants are a quarterback team.
I think they are. They probably shouldn't be, but I think they think they are.
Because at the end of the day, you still have to pay Daniel Jones this year. And as much as I know you're just kind of talking about this with the injuries with Penix, this is where ownership and money actually starts to get involved.
No, I've been pushing back on everybody saying the Giants are a quarterback team by saying, look at the contract. Yeah. Ownership's not going to let them.
Yeah, they're going to give Daniel Jones one more year.
Yeah.
And then if he flames out and he's terrible, then they're a quarterback team in 2025.
Yeah.
So I love Neighbors.
Were they on Shadur's list? I don't think they were.
I don't think so. But I love Neighbors for them. I just think that Dable, that offense, very, very easy fit for them, and it gives them a receiver that they don't have anybody on their roster that can touch Neighbors in terms of talent. So I have Neighbors. So we have Caleb, Jayden Daniels to the Commanders at 2, Drake May to the Patriots at 3, Marvin Harrison Jr. To the Cardinals at 4. I have Alt to the Chargers. You have Chargers trading out, and then Minnesota?
Minnesota, yep, taking McCarthy. And then Neighbors to the Giants. Yeah.
Which brings us to another team that I have no freaking clue what they're going to do, and that's the Tennessee Titans.
Oh, I feel very good about this. Well, it's a little different.
So I feel pretty good about who I gave them because I think this makes the most sense.
Is it Fashanu?
No.
All right.
Because they just drafted offensive linemen.
They drafted guard.
They drafted Skoronski, and they drafted somebody else before him,
plays
too.
Guard.
They have offensive linemen.
They don't have tackles.
I'm not saying that they don't have a need there, but to draft another offensive lineman again, like in the top 10 of a draft, was Skoronski, I think was 11. I don't know. So you have them taking Olu Fashanu.
Nope. Joe Alt. I still have him on the board.
Oh, right. You haven't taken Joe Alt.
Yeah.
If Joe Alt's still on the board, then that makes sense.
So if it wasn't Joe Alt, I probably would go Brock Bowers.
Okay.
What's his name? The new offensive coordinator.
Callahan.
Yeah. Comes from...
Head coach.
Whatever. The guy that got from Cincinnati.
Brian Callahan.
Yeah. Comes from Cincinnati where they ran, I think they were 7th in the league last year in 12 personnel. So
yeah. Is it Brian? That doesn't sound right.
Why are we we cover the league, right?
Brain farting right now.
Yeah. Brian Callahan. Yeah.
Yeah, Brian.
I know they have Okonkwo, right? Chigo Okonkwo, but this is a coach that loves to use 12. So, and Bowers would complement him well, but yeah, so their tackles are currently Jalen Duncan, John Ojukwu, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Andrew Rupsich, Lashavius Simmons, and Leroy Watson.
Okay, so maybe I underrated their tackle need a little bit.
Yeah, Skoronski played guard and he was good, but he's a guard. They've made that clear.
And yeah, they could put the tackles next to Skoronski, and then you have like a really good left
Joe
side.
Alt and Skoronski, that's your left side. That's really
if Joe Alt's still on the board, then I could see that.
Yeah. And that's I will acknowledge that's a little bit of a fall for Joe Alt, but again, I think the Vikings are going to buy on McCarthy. I think they are, and that is what happens here.
So I didn't know who to give the Titans because Alt's off my board,
right?
So I can't take Alt there. I don't really know what the Titans are thinking at quarterback right now, Obviously, all the quarterbacks are gone.
I don't think they're going to go quarterback
in your
at
scenario.
7. They're like a Bo Nix team, Spencer Rattler team.
So are they buying into Will Levis? Like, what are the tight
I think
ends?
they want to try to give Will Levis a year.
Jeez. I mean,
they just made this mistake with Malik Willis. I don't know why, but that's what it sounds like.
They're just such a bizarre team to me because they spent all this money in the offseason on guys.
Right, but they lost Derrick Henry, so they're going to have a new identity.
But they spent all this money on Calvin Ridley, L'Jarius Sneed, right? Like, they made all these moves. And Will Levis is not the quarterback.
Well, that's why, like, I was tempted to go with Dunze, but they've signed Hopkins and Ridley the last 2 years, so I don't think they're going to go receiver.
So
I don't think they're going to go defense.
The spot I settled on was Dallas Turner.
Oh, okay.
Because they do have a needed edge. I do think that they're probably a team that is sort of just thinking best player available here. And it's probably a guy like a Dunze, really, when it's all off the board.
The receiver doesn't make any sense.
But the receiver just doesn't make any sense for them. So this is where I think we start talking about some of the defensive guys in this draft. They just spent all the money on Sneed, so it's not corner. I think it's Dallas Turner.
So I would also say, like, if I had the Chargers trade back from 5, this is another prime trade down spot.
Yeah. I don't think they make this pick. I just don't know. I don't know how the cards fall for them to trade out necessarily.
I just told you, Joe Alt.
I don't think they make this pick.
If Joe Alt's there, you think they make the pick?
Yes, but I don't think Joe Alt's going to be there.
All right.
All right, moving on to 8.
Yep.
The Atlanta Falcons.
Right.
Who are not making this pick.
Oh, I have them making the pick.
Well, because you have McCarthy going higher.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So this is where I have J.J. McCarthy going.
All right.
I think between the Minnesota Vikings, the Raiders, the Broncos.
Yeah.
McCarthy's not going he's going somewhere with this 8th pick. I think this is the J.J. McCarthy pick.
Okay.
And I think that ultimately the Vikings get the deal done. They move up 3 spots, which probably means that they can potentially hang on to 23 because it's not as many on the old trade value chart. And they get their quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings are the best fit for all these quarterbacks because they have 2 receivers that can play and they have KOC who can call plays. But for any of these quarterbacks, I truly believe that J.J. McCarthy should be doing backflips if he gets drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. If he comes here, and this has been my whole thing with McCarthy, if he comes here and he's expected to be the franchise savior and be the guy that carries the Patriots back to contention, I think it's going to fail miserably. I do. If he goes to a team like the Minnesota Vikings, where he basically all he has to do is what Kirk Cousins did, or what he had to do at Michigan, was just make a couple plays on 3rd down and feed the ball to Justin Jefferson, perfect.
Right.
He'll be a good quarterback. Is he going to be great? Is he going to be MVP?
Well, people will think that. He's going to get the Brock Purdy effect.
I don't think so. But
I don't think so either, but people are going to fall for it.
Yeah, I think he'll be a very good functioning NFL starter in this situation. So if I'm McCarthy, I'm in love with this. Like, this is a great thing for me. So I have the Vikings trading up with the Falcons to 8 for McCarthy. This is also sort of in the middle because I just don't believe the hype.
Yeah.
But this is a low enough where I was like, all right, this could start to really happen. But if you're the Vikings, you're not giving up 3 future first-round picks for J.J. McCarthy, which I just think is crazy. You're giving up a smaller package, and I think it makes a little bit more sense.
I took Dallas Turner. I think on my board, McCarthy's gotten maybe a wide receiver team. Maybe the Chargers move up from 11. Maybe the Saints from 14 move up to try to jump the Bears. But I feel like defensive head coach, new era, all that. Dallas Turner, best defensive player still on the board. They've needed a pass rusher there for a while.
Yeah.
They haven't had a good edge rusher
John
there.
Abraham or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Well, I mean, like Vic Beasley had that 1 year.
Right. Wasn't Dwight Freeney there late in his career?
That sounds right.
No, which one of them was on the team in 18, the 28-3? Was that Freeney?
No. Grady Jarrett was on that team. Maybe that's who you're thinking about.
No, they had... Why do I think Dwight Freeney played for the Falcons?
He might have played for the Falcons late in his career, but I don't think
he did. Yeah, no, he was on the 28-3 team.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I think that was his last... no, he played one more year after they played for the Seahawks and Lions. But
that's crazy.
They've needed a legit edge rusher for a long time. Dallas Turner's still there, defensive coach. They'd probably get a decent offer, somebody trying to jump up for Odunze or Bowers with the Bears, Jets, and Chargers up next. But I think they stick and pick.
What do you think of Dallas Turner? We haven't really talked too much about defensive guys at the top of the draft.
I mean, he's not Will Anderson.
No.
but he's still a really good player.
Yeah.
He's not as consistent, but I think the peaks are the same.
He's raw. He's younger and a little bit more raw than Will Anderson coming out.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest differences, and he doesn't play the run as well as Will Anderson. He makes splash plays against the run, but Will Anderson has the ability to hold up at the point of attack and make splash plays, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes him so good. Dallas Turner, I think NFL.com has this as his comp. I think Brian Burns is a perfect comp. Really one of those guys that's very, very explosive, gets off the ball extremely well, is going to corner tackles, is going to be a problem with speed rushes, things like that, is going to shoot gaps in the run game, but maybe just needs a little bit more seasoning to round out his game. But I think he's the best defensive player in the draft. I do. I know that some.
I think he is.
I think some people think it's like Tyrion Arnold, maybe the corner from Alabama, or a lot of people really like Jared Verse. There's a lot of Jared Verse fans. I think it's Dallas Turner.
I think it's Dallas Turner because it does. I mean, floor and upside, all things considered, because his upside's tremendous.
All right, Caleb, Jayden, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr. I have Alt at 5 to the Chargers. You have McCarthy. We both have Neighbors. You have Alt to the Titans. I have Turner to the Titans. I have McCarthy at 8. You have Turner at 8. Number 9, Chicago Bears. I think this is probably one of the easiest picks in the top 10.
Oh, yeah.
Rome Odunze.
Yep.
Perfect. Just Caleb had Brandon Rice last year. This is a much better version.
Yeah.
And he did a really good job of feeding Brandon Rice. So I think this is a great fit. You give a receiver that can play on the outside like that can tilt coverage, but that also has that ability. Caleb starts running around back there. He's down there somewhere, right? The old
right.
He's down there somewhere adage. Rome Odunze has got that ability to climb the ladder, make those catches up above, high point fades, those types of things, jump balls into traffic. I think Rome Odunze is maybe one of the more safer prospects in the entire draft.
Yeah.
There's really a difficult time. I have a difficult time finding a way that he just completely is terrible, like a total bust. Just way too talented, way too well-rounded, way too good of a football player. Like, it's not just athlete. He's just a good football player.
Right.
So, yeah, Rome Odunze to the Bears at 9, I think, is a super easy one.
Yeah, agree, 100%.
There we go. 10. This one I had tough time with. New York Jets. Kicked a couple of reins around. I hate Brock Bowers for them. Probably the best player on the board at this point. Neither one of us have taken Bowers yet. He's probably the best player on the board. But Aaron Rodgers, you look at historically, not a real tight end quarterback, right? Like, not somebody that really feeds the tight end. I just don't really love that fit for Bowers. I thought about Olu Fashanu here.
Yeah.
To give him that tackle, behind Tyron Smith, who has the injuries. He's going to play a little bit as a rookie probably, and then he'll take over completely for Tyron Smith year 2. But I kind of have a little bit of surprise here.
Okay.
So I think the Jets are in this mindset where they are an all-in team right now, and I don't think that they're going to middle it. Like, Olu Fashanu to me is middling it because he's not going to play right away.
Right.
You have Tyron Smith at left tackle. You have Morgan Moses at right tackle. Yes, there's a chance that both those guys get hurt. One of those guys get hurt, and he gets into the lineup. But when you put it up on the whiteboard right now, he's not a rookie starter for you. And to me, that all offseason they've only done one thing, and that is we are pushing the chips all in the middle of the table for Aaron Rodgers. So to get to the draft and then draft somebody that's like a projection as a starter 2 years from now, I can't get behind. And I don't like Brock Bowers as a fit for them. So at 10 for the Jets, I have Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU.
But they have receivers.
I think that they go all in. Their receivers right now are Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, and Alan Lazard.
So where's he playing?
He's better than both Lazard and Mike Williams is, and Mike Williams always hurt.
I guess.
Brian Thomas Jr., the other reason why I think Brian Thomas Jr. is not a reach at 10, personally. I think the only reason why he might seem like a reach at 10 is because of the 3 guys ahead of him in the draft. I think he's that talented. I think he's explosive receiver, has the ability to run routes at the second level, obviously has the ability to take the top off. 4.3 speed at that size. I think we're almost underrating how freaky that is to be a 4.3 guy at like 210, 215. The other thing that I look at with him is that He's got some size, catch radius, those things, those elements, ball tracking ability. I think the Green Bay Packers, all Aaron Rodgers' career, never took a first-round receiver for him, right? That was the whole thing, right? We never took a first-round receiver. I think the Jets give him a first-round receiver, Brian Thomas Jr.
So I originally had Bowers to the Jets. I actually just came up with a better idea.
On the spot.
Yeah.
I like that.
I get your all-in thing. I
Yes.
do. But I think the Jets look at this and say there's a number of players we'd like maybe a little later on the board. We don't need a pick right now. Meanwhile, you have a Cincinnati Bengals team, shout out Trags,
Yes.
that really has been trying to get a good tight end for a while.
Bowers to the Bengals makes a ton of sense.
They really haven't had that dominant tight end in quite a bit. They might lose T. Higgins, so getting another elite pass catcher in there. Last year, the Saints gave up 16, 98, and 120 to get to 11. So this would be 3 more spots. So the Bengals will instead give up 18, 80, and 97 because they have 2/3.
Yeah.
So they're going to trade their first and 2/3 to get up to 10 and take Brock Bowers at 10 and, put the whole thing behind Joe Burrow. For at least 1 year, you're going to have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Brock Bowers, 2 solid tackles. You're loaded up. You're going for it. You're going for it.
It's a Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
I had a tough time with the Jets. I don't know what the Jets do here. I think
That's the Jets. You have to assume they're going to make the wrong pick.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Remember when
too.
they took Will McDonald?
Yeah, it was probably one of the worst picks of that first
That
round.
was a Cole Strange-esque pick.
It was ridiculous, and he can't get on the field. He might play this year
Because they lost Bryce Huff.
But didn't they added somebody in free agency because Will McDonald stinks, which we knew.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Who was it? We should be better.
I can't remember, but
Anyways, I had a tough time with the Jets. I think the best pick for them is Olufashanu. I think taking the tackle that could use a year behind a guy like Tyron Smith anyways, younger player too, but then probably is going to play as a rookie because Tyron Smith is eventually going to get hurt, inevitably going to get hurt, is probably what makes the most sense, but it just doesn't jive with their whole offseason. Like, why push
Hassan Reddick.
Hassan Reddick, yeah. So they're not playing Will McDonald. I didn't know what to do with the Jets. I really like Brian Thomas Jr. as a player. I think that they want to give Aaron Rodgers all the possible chips that he could ever need to put up points and to win games. But I think that the right pick would be to take one of the tackles. I do. But I don't think they will. I don't think they're that smart.
I think trade it, load it. Because remember, they don't have a second-round pick either.
They could trade it.
Trade it and load up, yeah.
All right. So that's our top 10. We'll see who hits more picks. Probably you, because you do this more often than I do. But we'll see what happens. I really think that the picks that I feel the best about, though, just to do that, Jayden to the Commanders, and obviously Caleb to the Bears, but we all know that.
That doesn't count. That's the free space.
Jayden to the Commanders, Harrison to the Cardinals, Odunze to the Bears. Those picks I just feel like...
Neighbors to the Giants?
That one makes the most sense if they're not a quarterback team. Who knows what they are?
All right.
The Giants are all... Who knows? I agree, though. I think with the Giants, the only guy that I think that they could really fall in love with in terms of the quarterbacks is May, because he is Josh Allen-ish.
Yeah.
And you have Dable there. You have Joe Schoen there. You have Buffalo guys running that ship. So Dable's got to look at Drake May on film and see a lot of Josh Allen, young Josh Allen.
Yeah, the question is, does he look at Joe Milton and see the same thing?
Oh, I don't know. That's a stretch. But I don't think they're a quarterback team because the owner. I think they're the owners. We just gave this contract to Daniel Jones.
I'm
you just gave this contract to Daniel Jones.
You can do that. Do that on your own time. Do that on day 2, day 3. You're not doing it here.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's answer some of these emails to wrap up the show here. And obviously, as you would expect, Alex, we have plenty of J.J. McCarthy emails asking me why I hate him so much. So where is the first one that I saw? Oh, yeah. This is from Chad in Atlanta.
All right.
Why does Evan hate J.J. McCarthy? Just kidding. I did want to ask, though, what's the difference between projecting what Drake May could potentially be after he fixes his issues, mechanics, footwork, that type of stuff, versus projecting what J.J. McCarthy could potentially be? It's a good question. they're both projections in different ways.
Yeah.
I think with Drake May, you see consistently the flashes of what it could be if he's consistently that all the time. Where with JJ, it's like the mystery box. It's our old Family Guy bit, right? It's you could have a boat or you could have a mystery box. To me, Drake May is like a boat that has a lot of really good bones, but probably needs some fixing up.
You have to build the boat.
Yeah. Whereas I think with JJ McCarthy, you're like, well, it could even be a boat, right? Like and that's the difference. McCarthy's issues to me, if he doesn't iron out in the NFL, and he's going to be a complete flop, which are accuracy and decision making. I think that when I read about McCarthy and all these anonymous, scouts executive pieces that are coming out now, when people tell me that JJ McCarthy is a good processor, it doesn't compute. Like I just don't see that on film at all. Is he quick and decisive? Yeah, when the first read is open, he's quick and decisive. You know who was also really quick and decisive on his first read? Mac Jones. To me, really good processors are guys that recognize coverage and say, this is covered or a tight window, but their numbers are over here, which means that this is going to be wide open over there. So I'm going to come off this and get to that, right? That to me is high level processing. Being able to make a quick decision because you ran a play action concept and the crosser is wide open coming off the play action fake and you get it out decisively and quickly. That's not processing. That's just you have a quick release. Like that's all that is. So with McCarthy, accuracy, processing, decision making, all those types of things I have a lot of concerns with. I understand what people are seeing with him physically though. Like I understand that he's got a plus arm, plus mobility. He has I don't know if I would say he has top 10 traits at the position, but he has first round traits at the position, just physically. He has first round traits. I just think there's way too much Zach Wilson. There's way too much spray. Everybody gives Drake May a ton of crap for all the sprays on film with him. I think there's just as many with JJ McCarthy where he just misses open guys. And I think that there's a lot of processing issues there too.
I've said this about JJ McCarthy since like November. If you feel really good about, and I know it's going to sound weird coming from me, if you really, really like him, or even if you really, really hate him, if you feel strongly about JJ McCarthy one way or the other, you're kidding yourself. Because there's simply not enough there to truly get a full evaluation.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean he's going to be bad. Like, he could be good. I just don't know how you can look at the entire body of work and be that convicted. And when you're talking about the third overall pick specifically for the Patriots, you need to make that pick with some conviction. And I just don't think there's enough from J.J. McCarthy to have that kind of conviction.
Yeah, I'm with you. To reiterate, with Drake May, you can see it. I can see the high level plays on film, and I can turn it on and I can say, look, he made, I think it was 78 big time throws over the last 2 years, which leads the entire FBS in that statistic.
Yeah.
So the high end plays are on film. There aren't as many high end plays with J.J. McCarthy. What we're being told with J.J. McCarthy by these anonymous scouts and executives and some other, these quarterback people, is that there's all this untapped potential that just needs to be realized, that just needs to be brought out, because Michigan held him back. Michigan didn't allow him to play to that potential because they just wanted to play, they wanted to be a dead ball team where it just, we're going to play defense, we're going to run the football, he's going to make some plays when it counts, and we're going to win, we're going to go 15-0, right? That's they played to win, not to showcase J.J. McCarthy. That's the other side of it. I think that's a really risky proposition to make at the top of the draft, to say that we're going to get it out of him and we're the team that's going to put it on his shoulders and he's going to carry us. I just think that that's a big leap. And more times than not, when you do that in the draft, I feel like that's where teams get themselves into trouble, is thinking that this guy has this development that's just waiting to be tapped into, instead of taking the guy where it's physically already there. I think that happens all the time. That you can get into some trouble. All right. What else we got here? This is a question from Byron, and it's a very long email, so I'll just try to sum it up the best that I can. Basically, Byron's feeling is that Jayden Daniels is not in the same tier as these other quarterbacks.
Is it better or worse?
Worse. Excuse me.
All right.
He feels that Jayden Daniels, 6-year quarterback, play with a bunch of receivers, first-round talent at receiver, And it took him until this 6th season to really break out and win the Heisman. And now we're overrating Jayden Daniels.
All right, well, he didn't give me any reasons that I can't dispute by saying so did Joe Burrow. And I'm not saying Daniels will beat Joe Burrow, but, those are not necessarily indicators of failure.
He's saying, this is his finish, I'm not saying Jayden Daniels will be a bust, but a bust because that's not what the process is about. It's about trying to figure out what profile you're comfortable with developing as a prospect. And for Jayden Daniels' case, there are too many red flags. So I think with Jayden Daniels, it's pretty easy to envision it working out. And that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
Can you envision this working out?
What's the path to success?
I think it's pretty easy to envision it, building an offense that works with Jayden Daniels, because even though he's not stylistically, I know there's been some pushback about the Lamar comparisons, he does not play football like Lamar Jackson 1-for-1, other than the fact that he's extremely mobile and can throw from the pocket better than you would think, right? Like that's it.
Right.
But Lamar coming out of college, and you know how much I love Lamar in college. Lamar coming out of college had two things that are different from Jayden Daniels. One, Lamar is a scat back. Like, Lamar has quickness, Lamar has agility, Lamar is very elusive. Whereas Jayden's a straight line guy. He's an explosive straight line speed type of guy. So they run differently. And I'm dying over here. But they run differently.
We're both falling apart.
Jesus Christ.
With this draft. Look at what this draft process has done to us.
My God, this is what happens when you have like a breakfast bar before you go on air, and then it messes up your throat a little bit. That's what happened here. Anyways, Jayden.
I'm just getting my ass kicked by allergies.
Yeah, I take some allergy medicine.
I did.
Take more. Jeez, we got to get you some prescription allergy medicine over here. We're falling apart. The draft's 8 days away.
8 days. 8 days.
We can make it. Jayden Daniels, Lamar Jackson in college at Louisville, and now I would say even with Baltimore, peppers the middle of the field. That's where he lives. In breakers, seams, rope it up the seam. He's got a stronger arm than Jayden Daniels, I think, to drive it into those types of windows. Jayden Daniels, much smoother mechanically as a thrower.
Yeah.
Much smoother. Feet, eyes, hips, shoulders, efficient release, doesn't really have a big wind up, gets the ball out quickly. Lamar Jackson had a lot of those mechanical stuff that needed to be worked on, footwork, and he had sort of that weird like shot put type release. It was almost like throwing darts instead of, that real Tom Brady picturesque type of release with the ball. So they're different, but how the defenses are going to have to defend you is going to be the same. Like, you're going to have a quarterback that's the most dynamic athlete on the field all the time. So when defensive coordinators, we talk about Tuesday players all the time.
Right.
When they get into that Tuesday meeting and they start to say, how are we going to defend the Patriots? How are you going to defend the Commanders with Jayden Daniels? You all have to craft an entire pass rush plan around Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, you can't use your normal rush.
You have to spy or mush rush. You have to play certain coverages. Like, certain coverages with Jayden Daniels to me are just off the board. Like, you're not going to play two-man against Jayden Daniels because there's nobody in the box to keep him in the pocket.
Right.
Right? That's what Florida tried to do. He put up 600 yards.
Right.
Right? So you have to be able to figure it out. I understand some of the concerns with Daniels in terms of his passing profile, but ultimately the reason why I disagree with the emailer a little bit, and I think we both would I be over the moon if they took Daniels at 3? Probably not. But would I be like, yeah, that's, box checked, right? Like, we're good, right? That's the right pick. If they took Daniels at 3, yes, because that type of ability, the skill set is translatable. Like, I can see how they can get there with the skill set, even if I have some concerns about the passing and the fit and all that kind of stuff. The skill set is worthy of the 3rd overall pick. Yeah. So that's why I've had him in the Drake May tier.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
All right. Let's see. So, this is Michael from Brockton. Mike from Brockton is on your side of the street, Alex. Maybe even a little bit stronger than you with Michael Penix.
Okay.
He thinks Michael Penix is better than Drake May.
Right now, he probably is.
So this is good email.
Yeah.
What he says is that I believe Penix is the superior QB, not the better prospect.
Exactly.
But the better quarterback.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%.
I don't know if I go all the way there, but I understand what he's saying.
Well, that's the debate we had, remember, of like the college tape versus the projection.
Yes.
Like, who is a better quarterback in 2023 on tape?
Penix.
Right, exactly.
We did this before.
We did, yeah. That's what I'm saying. This is an example of that.
Yeah, and this is why I think it's crazy that it's not more of a conversation between Penix and McCarthy. Because there's no question who had the better tape in 2023 between those two guys.
They're not even – there's so many – how many quarterbacks are between them?
Multiple.
Right.
So I think you look at draft year tape, which I know we did this months ago, but it's been months ago at this point.
Yeah.
Daniels is definitely one.
Daniels is one. I think Penix is second.
I think Penix is two.
Yeah.
That's why they were Heisman winner and Heisman runner-up.
It's funny. There's like almost an opposite thing going on here where Penix is all the pluses are on the field and all the concerns are other things. J.J. McCarthy is his whole stock is built up around all the things you can't see on film.
The freaking pro day.
Somebody had a tweet the other day. It was after that quote.
He really is Zach Wilson.
J.J. McCarthy. Somebody that there was that report that J.J. McCarthy was like telling prospects like, "Don't come to Michigan if you want to party. I'm here to win a national championship."
That was Brugler in the Beast.
Well, but then somebody said like, "How come everything pumping up J.J. McCarthy has nothing to do with him actually throwing a football?" So like, to me, Penix is the positives are all the tape, and then you have the questions about everything else.
Yeah.
J.J. McCarthy, the positives are everything else, and the questions exist on tape. To which I say, at a certain point, we got to remember the primary source here is what these guys did on the field in the fall.
Film is king.
At a certain point, 11-on-11 competitive padded football has to be the driving.
No. Shorts and a T-shirt and throwing at a pro day are more important.
And that's, I think, why I differ so much from everybody, not you, but most people, between McCarthy and Penix. If a 21-year-old kid walks into an NFL locker room and says, "Hey, none of you are partying, I'm here to win a Super Bowl," he's going to get laughed at.
Yeah.
But a guy that can go out there and sling the football, and by the way, is a pretty decent leadership quotient as well. Everything we've heard about Michael Penix, he's got that dog in him.
Does.
At a certain point, what the guy did, 11-on-11, chin strap buckled, needs to mean more than everything else. And this is the time of year we lose track of that, but come on, man. Typically right before the draft, you get back to it.
I love how fired up this gets you.
Because it's
your Penix defense. And I'm glad that you're back to standing on the table for your guy. Because
I always was.
Wavering a little bit.
First of all, I always was. It's not even necessarily a Penix defense. It represents something bigger. Watch the freaking games. Who is a better football player?
Yeah. I understand that, and if you're a fan, even if you're in media like us, I understand.
Can't I be both?
Yeah, sure. But I'm just saying, like, for anybody, I understand that you might not trust yourself enough to go and watch the tape and come up with an opinion on a player. So that's why a lot of people rely on people like us or rely on these anonymous sources, rely on Dan Orlovsky, like whatever. And I get all of that, but I think at the end of the day, you can still watch and have like a pass-fail test with guys. Like, you might not be able to understand all the little nuances.
If you're a football fan, you have a certain baseline understanding.
Can this guy play or not?
Right.
And Penix can play.
So what year would that have been? Like 2012, I think it was 2012, right?
Yeah.
So I was senior in high school, and I remember I saw Chandler Jones tear it up. And I just looked at that, and I said, this dude, yeah, he can play. And, like, I didn't do the draft that deeply at that time, but I just knew, having watched enough football, this guy, and this is before the draft, this guy can do it.
Yeah.
He can do it. It's all there. It's just he passes the eye test. Watch Mike, and at a certain point, the eye test goes against all the different kinds of nerds. Watch the game. Who's better? End of the day. And if you're going to watch the games and tell me McCarthy, all the games, not just the national championship, all the games.
Yeah.
And tell me you think McCarthy's a better quarterback than Michael Penix?
He's not.
He's not.
He's younger.
He's not.
And he doesn't.
It doesn't mean he's not a better prospect.
He's younger and he's cleaner. Like in terms of the injuries.
The injury history, yeah.
That's what it is. And I think a lot of teams, I'm actually hoping to get to ask Elliot Wolf this question tomorrow, because this draft, one of the big things about this draft is that you have two guys in Drake May and J.J. McCarthy who are young.
Yeah.
Really young. Like 21 years old young. I don't even think Drake May is 21 yet.
I think he is.
He's like, I think he might be 20.9. I think he might be 21 in May.
No, he turns 22 in August.
Okay, so maybe it's JJ that's not 21.
JJ turned 21 in January.
So they're both wrong, is the point.
Is it Caleb Williams?
I don't know. I thought one of them wasn't even 21 yet.
Caleb Williams 22.
I don't know what I'm thinking. Anyways.
Is it Amarius Mims?
The point being is that with Penix and with Daniels, they are older. Penix is way older. He's like 24.
Yeah.
Daniels is 23. So the question is how much does that matter? How much does age and what it really isn't, what it's not about is like second contract and all that kind of stuff because he's a quarterback.
I think the owners look at that a little bit.
The owners might, but I don't think the football people do because if he hits, as
you just said, the owners are getting involved here.
Yeah, unfortunately. If he hits as a quarterback,
yeah,
he at 24, he's still playing for 10 years.
Right.
So what difference does it really make? I think the bigger thing is that it's untapped potential, right? It's developmental, trajectory, where you think that a 24-year-old Michael Penix, a 23-year-old Jayden Daniels is done developing. Like this is what they are. Whereas Drake May and J.J. McCarthy have a little bit more leeway. J.J. McCarthy, I would say in particular, because I don't know how much bigger you can get than 6'5", 225 in Drake May's case. But J.J. McCarthy, maybe he gets a little bit more meat on the bones. Like he's a little bit lighter. Maybe he gets a little bit more, into an NFL weight room, bulks up a little bit, adds a little bit more velo, all those types of things. All that's possible. And I think that his answer, I think, would be pretty telling. Like if he comes out and he says, age is just a number, right? No, for lack of a better way of putting it, then I think that tells you that they don't really care.
Yeah.
If he says that, there's a lot of validity to the fact that these guys are younger, they have more time to develop, they're not as finished products as these other guys, then that's what the league looks at.
Yeah.
Is that J.J. McCarthy has untapped potential, is young, all these types of things, and Penix is what he is.
So I just looked it up. McCarthy is the 10th, according to EstablishRun.com. McCarthy is the 10th youngest player in this draft. Drake May is like 20th. Drake May is actually a little older than Caleb Williams. Anyway, according to EstablishRun.com, there's 9 players who will be under 21 at the draft. So that's an interesting list.
It must have been one of these guys.
Troy Franklin, Jalen Wright, Jatavian Sanders, Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, Jonathan Brooks, Malik Neighbors, Audric Estime, Braylon Allen.
Yeah, it could have been any one of those guys that I was talking about, frankly, because all those guys are, I've done some research on pretty much all those people.
Although that thing also said that Caleb Williams is younger than Drake May, which he's not. So
who knows?
Take that with a grain of salt.
Anyways, next question here. This is from Pat Nagawam, common caller, but of course our phones are still out. This first question, Alex, I think you'll get a kick out of, but I feel reluctant to even read this on the air. Evan, I watched a video with you and Taylor Kyles recently, and I have to ask, is he that tall or are you that short?
No, Taylor's pretty tall.
Taylor's tall.
Yeah, Taylor's big.
I'm not a tall guy. 5'8", maybe on a good day, 5'9". Not a tall guy. But Taylor is.
He's got to be over 6 feet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Taylor's a tall dude.
Yeah.
And I'm not like one of these wimps that was like, I got to stand on a box or something. No, I just let him be taller than me. It wasn't quite me next to Tyree Jackson. It wasn't quite that level. But it wasn't quite Mike Reese next to Trent Brown, but it was, he's taller than me by quite a bit. Yeah. Absolutely. Second question here. I like this one better than the first one for sure.
Okay.
But just good question. Let's say May is the pick at number 3. And we take a wide receiver with the second pick, assuming 34 or whatever. Who is the best potential binky for Drake May? I think this is a great question.
Well, who's the wide receiver at 34? Or did he mean tackle at 34?
No, he's saying we're taking a receiver with the second pick.
Oh, which I thought he meant like who on the team, because I was going to say Pop Douglas.
No. We're taking a receiver with the second pick. So who is, and he said, you could trade up a little bit if you have to.
Oh, I think A.D. Mitchell's the best player. I don't know that he's like a binky kind of receiver, though.
Yeah.
If you want that guy that's going to catch, when I hear that, I think like 15 target, 10 catch guy.
You hear like 100 catches a season.
Right. That's guy. Probably Roman Wilson, maybe Ricky Pearsall.
So he said Ladd McConkey was his answer.
Yeah. If he's there.
So Ladd McConkey scares me a little bit because he had all sorts of injuries last year at Georgia. He was incredible when he played.
Yeah.
I think he had caught 30 of 39 targets for like 19 yards a catch or something crazy like that. But he had, I think it was back and knee, back and ankle, something like that, that kept him in and out of the lineup. And he's a little bit frail. Like that, the frame is a little bit frail. Top of the second round, I'm in. If I'm a team in the first round, I think that it's a little rich for a first round pick to basically only have like 400 yards of production last year and take him in the first round. But with that said, I understand where he's coming from.
Him or Roman Wilson?
Yeah, then McConkey's like the separator, right? The twitchy separator route runner.
McConkey or Roman Wilson?
I think that Drake May, though, needs a guy with a little bit of catch radius.
Okay.
Because he's not going to be pinpoint, right? So I love A.D. Mitchell for that reason. He's a down the field thrower. Like you're going to be pretty vertical in the offense. And I also think that you have to have somebody that can save him sometimes from not having that perfect pinpoint ball placement. If the ball is a little bit outside, but it's catchable, you're going to need somebody that's going to be able to catch that pass. Where Roman Wilson, love him, but he's shorter, smaller, doesn't have the catch radius. McConkey's a little bit longer.
So then what about Ricky Pearsall? He's a very good catch radius.
Great hands.
Great hands.
Could see him as
fearless,
a binky.
too. Fearless.
He'll
take those hits. Like if Drake May's going to leave him a defender, he'll go catch the ball.
I don't love Tez Walker.
No.
But
not at the second pick. At 68, if you draft Drake May, I think there's inherent value in reuniting those guys.
Yeah. I like the Tez Walker skill set for Drake May.
Yeah.
I just want a more polished version of Tez Walker.
Well, so what if they go tackle at 34, and then we're doing this at 68?
Yeah, if they went tackle at 34 and then took maybe they take two different receivers, and one is like a Tez Walker and one is, one of those kind of, jitterbugs. I don't know who would be available.
Later on, like Malik Washington,
Jamar Thrash from Louisville,
Anaya Smith, Jacob Cowing.
Cowing was the other one. Those guys I think could be interesting, kind of yin and yangs.
Yeah.
They also would have Pop Douglas, so they'd have a little bit of that.
What about Johnny Wilson?
Yeah. I'd probably rather go with Tez just from the familiarity standpoint, but
Wilson should have a bigger catch radius than he does.
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe you could coach that up.
That does worry me though, with some of the McConkeys, Wilsons, Worthies of the world, is that they're going to need a quarterback that's going to consistently put the ball on them.
Right.
And as good as some of those high-end throws are down the field, I have no doubt that Drake May will make a handful of just absolute dimes on vertical routes to those guys.
Yeah.
But in terms of like they're coming across the field and he's got to hit the moving target, maybe there might be somebody that's a little bit better at adjusting to that.
Somebody on in the YouTube comments said Keon Coleman is a safety blanket for Drake May.
If the Patriots draft J.J. McCarthy and Keon Coleman with their first two picks, you might need to put me like in a straitjacket or something. Like you need to call a therapist immediately, and you need to get me a session like that day.
What if they draft like Graham Barton or Jackson Powers Johnson?
Oh God, I was making a list of I was looking at the consensus board and Brugler's top 100 and just made a list of some of the guys that I haven't studied yet, because I always try to have the entire top 100. Like I want to make sure I know everybody that gets drafted in the first 2 days for sure. And there's like so many guys like the Graham Bartons, the Powers Johnson. Do I really have to spend any time studying or watching or researching a center? Even some.
Well, it helps when they get to free agency in a few years.
Even some of the Jared Verse, Byron Murphy, Latu Latu.
Again, I just like to be aware because
I know because
I am available down the road.
I am aware, but am I going to spend time out of my day to really dig into those guys?
You take one day and you do a few minutes on each of them.
So I didn't really answer Patty's question. A.D. Mitchell's probably the most realistic, and maybe now with some of this McGinn stuff that came out about him, maybe that is even more realistic as the 34th pick. The dream. And I know I just took him at 10th overall in my mock draft, so this is like pie in the sky. I think the best receiver in the draft for Drake May is Brian Thomas Jr. Because
it's not happening.
It just combines all the elements.
Well, if you're gonna go, if you're gonna go that route, the best receiver for him is Adunze.
Yeah, but like that's really not gonna happen. Like
you took them one pick apart from each other.
I know I did, but like I realized that it was probably a little bit of like a surprise. I wanted to throw one curveball in there. Right. My entire top 10 was completely chalk. I had to throw like one curveball in, But I think Brian Thomas Jr. is what I literally just said, which is a better version of Tez Walker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I could see that as being a great fit, but probably not going to happen. All right. David in Madrid said, I hear what you're saying, and I'm a huge Penix fan. But if we were to draft him, shouldn't we have more concerns over Onwenu at right tackle since he is a lefty? So this is an interesting question because there's a lot of elements to him being a lefty that would be a factor. Think about it conceptually. Everything flips.
Right.
Your bootlegs are going the other way. Your route concepts, like if you're running, usually you don't chase the read, right? So short stuff to long, long to short, right? You start somewhere with your eyes in that respect. All that stuff has to be flipped. The whole playbook.
Yeah.
Not just the blind side, right? All of it. And Roger Rosengarten at Washington was over on the right side, and that was to be on the blind side.
Right.
He was a blind side protector in college for Penix. So should I be more concerned about Onwenu? I actually almost feel better about it because now you're not relying on the rookie to be a blindside protector. You're relying on a guy like Onwenu.
Yeah, but Onwenu's mobility as a blindside protector and dealing with some of those speed rushers. I feel like at that point, you move Onwenu back into guard and you draft a guy like Roger Rosengarten.
Who can play right.
Yeah, and now the concerns. And honestly, actually, if we're going to do this, draft Roger Rosengarten. Onwenu moves back inside to right guard.
Yep.
And now I actually feel a lot better about Chuks Okorafor at left tackle because he's not the blindside protector.
Yeah. I think the one thing about Penix, though, is that he can have a short pocket. Like, I don't think he's one of those guys that's going to need to drop back far because he's got such a good arm. Guys that drop back that far are trying to create a pocket.
Right, they want to crow hop.
Yeah. So Penix is not going to have to be able to have to do that. So he will be able to live in a shorter pocket, I think. Yeah. So that's one benefit of maybe Onwenu. I just feel either way, one of the tackle spots is going to be a rookie or be a weak spot on the line. Yeah. And maybe you look at it and say, I'd rather have the experience in the guy that I trust in Onwenu be on the blind side than, Javon Foster or whoever, they end up picking on day 2 of the draft. I just threw out a name. But it's an interesting point. Like it'd be a really fun conversation if they do take Penix. And I actually kind of love the idea of the all Washington draft. Like just take Penix, take a Dunze, take Penix, take Rosengarten, and take like Polk or McMillan too. Like just bring them all.
You got to throw Dylan Johnson in there for me then.
Okay, fine. Dylan Johnson too on day 3.
All right,
done. Why not?
If you could have a draft where you just and realistically, so as I say this, like if you say LSU, you don't get Jayden Daniels and Malik Neighbors, you have to choose one.
Yeah.
If you could have them draft just from one school, what school would it be?
This year?
Yeah, this year.
Oh, it's close between Texas and Washington.
I still go Texas. And then because you're so set now to just draft a quarterback next year.
I go Washington. I'm surprised you go Texas because of Penix. Like I go Washington because you have a quarterback.
That's true.
Texas, you got Jacoby Brissett with A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy.
I just love the idea of A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy with Pop Douglas in Alex Van Pelt's offense. I'm a little surprised, honestly. I said now as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, should I said Washington? But like
Washington.
Washington.
If you drafted Washington to offense,
true.
You would have Penix, Troy Fautanu,
because I was sitting
Roger
there
Rosengarten, Jalen Polk, and Jalen McMillan in the NFL. All together.
You're not going to get Fautanu and Adunze. That's the thing. Like you got to be. You get one from each.
You get Adunze, Penix, Rosengarten, and probably Polk or McMillan.
McMillan and Dylan Johnson and maybe Braylon Trice.
Well, he's a defensive player.
Ulfoshio. Yeah, I'd probably go Washington.
That Washington offense would eat.
Remember, I was sitting there during the Big 12 championship. Like, can they just draft Texas?
Yeah, no, Texas is good too. Yeah, but I'm not like a big Quinn Ewers guy. I'd rather Penix.
Oh, I know.
I'd rather Penix. I know you were mad at me about
that's a ridiculous take.
We'll see what happens.
I can't wait for this year.
Maybe he's better next year.
I think he's going to be. Well, he lost a lot of receivers. I guess we'll see.
All right. Well, very quickly, last one. Raymond threw out Xavier Legette as a potential binky for Drake Bay. Could see it.
Yeah.
Definitely got good ball skills and the vertical ability. So I think that one's interesting. I do worry about the smaller guys, and they already have that with Pop Douglas too. So that's an element of it as well. There's a lot.
I really don't want to see him draft a true slot receiver. That's the one thing you have on offense that works.
Yeah,
that's the one guy you have that's like legit. Don't bury him or bury your draft pick or whatever.
All right, that does it for this show. We will be back next week. We still haven't decided what exactly the schedule is going to be like for next week for us. But we'll be back at some point next week to discuss, probably discuss the picks more than preview.
So is there a chance that this is our last
There's a chance.
show before the draft?
There's a
Who are
chance.
they taking?
Drake May.
Drake May, same.
Yeah.
All right, but we hopefully have one more before the draft.
Well, whether you're in the game or betting on the game, you'll need a game plan. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the New England Patriots, provides you with everything you need to build your personal betting game plan so you can get in all the action, like the draft, while practicing safe bets. Visit DraftKings.com/responsible-gaming to learn more about all safe betting tools DraftKings has to offer. Hope is here, 800-327-5050 or gamblinghelpline.ma.org. Must be 21 plus. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com. Physically present in Massachusetts. See DraftKings.com/responsible-gaming for details and state-specific responsible gambling resource. And lastly, doing a little spring cleaning these days, Alex. Any spring cleaning for you?
After the draft.
Well, Bob's Discount Furniture can help. Shop storage packet styles like super comfy sectionals with built-in storage, party-ready dining cabinets, and storage seating, and best-selling beds with built-in drawers, all at Bob's everyday low prices. Spring into the new season at your nearest Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. We'll see you at the draft, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.